Hey, everybody. Extremely excited about this interview. One of my great friends. One of the reasons why Community Pay It Forward is still going today. There's no doubt in my mind that the work that this man has put into my company is the reason why we're still here today. So this is a very long overdue and exciting interview for me. The great Mr. Z from Z World Webs. How are you doing, brother?
I am feeling very grateful and privileged to be in your presence. And if you ask me, you're not just building this business, you are building a community of helping others pay it forward so they don't have to go through it alone. And thank you so much for having me. And I'd state for the record that we're not friends. We're brothers from a different mother, and I'm just so glad to be here today. Thank you, Zach.
Hey, like I said, we've been trying to find the right time to put this together. I mean, it's one of those things you and I are talking to each other, multiple times a week, but just trying to find the time to sit down and hash this interview out. It's been a little challenging, but I'm glad that we're able to finally get here. Z, one of the reasons why you and I get along so well is because your heart for people who need assistance is immeasurable. You see people in need, and your first reaction is to run to try to help them. What what brings this on? What's your story behind that?
Well, I do appreciate asking that question, and being able to help out others is a privilege. And I often say it a lot, but there are plenty of people on this planet that can do exactly what I can do, but it's nice to know that I could be chosen of those billions of people. And of course, for your introductions to your nonprofit contacts, as well as those who have not only served our country, but also those who have served our communities. Uh, uh, the why I do what I do to help out people, it's all about giving back. It's not about what you know, it's who you know that can help out. I go through a lot of one-on-one sessions with a lot of people, and sure, anyone can build websites, anyone can build computers, but not everyone has the same passion as you do and your fellow partners do in terms of serving our communities in in a national basis and on a worldwide basis. Uh, but I'm not going to try to solicit my services. But I do want to say the reason why I do like to help out others is because a wise person, I'll just say my father, he always told me that if you make it your job to help out other people, you'll never have to find issues finding work ever again. So, in other words, if you make it your purpose if you make it your purpose to help out other people, it'll never be difficult for you to find work. But it's never work, it's just fun for me. So it's just knowing that we can make a difference, being in a country that allows us to exercise our freedom of speech, and of course, helping others with full integrity is why I do what I do. Not as an American, but also as a human being or human doing.
You have a very special heart for our veterans, the ones who have served our country, the ones who serve our community with first responders and law enforcement, stuff like that. You have when it comes to our program, you have a unique view because you've seen the worst when it comes to the treatment of our veterans, with them sleeping on park benches in New York City, in subway tunnels and stuff like that. I know this is something that really bugs you. What for those of us who are not in that large metro area, what are some of the things that you see every day that people just need to be aware of?
Of course, and I know you are much of an advocate as we all are to help our veterans in terms of their employment, homelessness or houselessness and other issues that I can't say yet. I do want to state for the record, I don't live in Manhattan as much as I'd love to. I live in the far side of Long Island, but I used to commute to Manhattan on a daily basis to commute to work because we all enjoy commuting. But there were instances where I did have to, I had the displeasure of seeing people who are homeless wearing their veterans jackets. How do I know? Because they had patches on their sleeves. Especially in the wintertime, it's not easy when they're sleeping in subway cars and in benches. And more recently, a lot of stations, underground subway stations, have removed benches or places to sit to avoid having more homeless people or homeless vets on the streets. And more recently in Brooklyn, I've seen it firsthand where they used to have rectangular vents sitting in street corners or on sidewalks. Now they've actually remodeled all those vents to make sure that there are spikes sticking out from those vents and to avoid I don't want to say the homeless, but those who don't have a place to stay, including our vets, can't sleep in those benches. And more recently, or I wouldn't say recently, but what I've seen is that if you ever see a bench, if you're lucky enough in the New York City subway, it's it's not just one long bench. It's a bench that has separated dividers in between that makes it very difficult for those to sleep on. And I understand you're supposed to wait a couple of minutes if the trains are on time, but yeah, it's I've seen it firsthand, and there's a reason why certain cars are empty. And if you think, oh wow, this is great, no one's in the subway car. Well, let's just say they got to take care of their business because they have no place to go. And this time of year, you think it's hard sleeping on your bed without a pillow. Imagine sleeping on the floor full of garbage, vermin, droppings, and that skin that meets with concrete overnight, it sticks. And and I'm not saying anything bad about being homeless, but just imagine not brushing your teeth for one day. When in their case, they can't brush for weeks, maybe months, or a whole year. No dental work, no one's checking up on them, and it's unfortunate that these homeless veterans or homeless people in general, and I do say people or citizens, are just treated like second-class citizens. So going back to our veterans, they deserve a lot more respect than just to walk over them at a local subway terminal or give them a few coins. And it's a trend these days, not to sound like an old man, but people are only giving a couple of dollars to homeless people unless they're being filmed or live streamed just to tell people, hey, everyone, I'm doing a good deed. Well, there are silent heroes like yourselves that are helping veterans without even broadcasting it. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if if I'm getting rewarded for it, because the biggest reward is just getting the opportunity to help.
You've
That's what
been part
that's
of,
what
yeah, go on ahead, please finish.
no, I'm just glad to be a part of this organization and happy to be a part of meet. I met a lot of great people and I want to stay for the audience. You, brother man, were the first person to give me a chance to work with nonprofits. When I first started out, I was anxious, I was very hungry, maybe a little bit too salesy at the time. And oftentimes people would say, oh, you want to work with nonprofits? Build your portfolio and we'll get right back to you, which to this they never did. But you gave me that chance. So, Mr. Z, I could see that you're passionate about nonprofits. Let's get started. I mean, of course, I have to build your trust, but it's not like you went for the gun, but you had other people lined up, and I'm glad that I could have been chosen out of those hundreds or thousands of people who probably were hounding you to do your website or be a part of this organization. And that's the other reason why I'm here. I want to be loyal as you've been loyal to me, and as much as our veterans have been loyal to us to protect our freedom, but more importantly, uh, give back. Give us the opportunity to give back. There's no worse feeling when we're living in a country where we're ruled by a dictator who wants to go to war constantly with other people because their bomb is bigger than ours.
No. Well, I just know that we've got 1% of the society that raises their hand and gives that pledge to give up their freedom, give up their lives
Yeah.
in service of our country. And when their reward, a lot of times, is when they come home, the streets are waiting for 'em. And I think that and you have been part of the prior 22-hour podcasts. You'll be joining us again this year. But our mission is trying to change that in any way we can. Um, but veterans isn't the only thing that's on that's in your heart. You also have a deep love for animals. You have a deep love for the environment, for traffic victims, for so many things. And you run a wonderful program for people when they hire you on, and it's in support of nonprofits. You want to tell us about that?
I would be humbled. Thank you very much for those acknowledgments. And I may look like an animal myself, but I am a huge animal. I don't want to say activist, but I would say that I believe that all animals are part of the animal kingdom, or uh, to be politically correct, in our animal species, they deserve the same amount of respect as us humans too, because we're all animals in our own respect. And unfortunately, there are animals to this day that are being poached, that are being shark finned, uh, mistreated. And I'm going to say something that might be offensive to some, but some of their pets are being declawed for protective reasons. But imagine declawing your pet and leave them out in the street just because they don't want them anymore. And just a quick PSA, pets are not just Christmas presents or birthday presents. They're like people too. They will love you unconditionally, like dogs, some cats, and birds too. Uh, but there's a lot we can do to prevent the extinction of our animal species and survivors of human trafficking. And I do want to emphasize survivors, not victims. I'm actually working with a survivor of human trafficking that she is often going to court on behalf of the survivors of human trafficking to confront them and say, this is the person that has kept me captive in this basement for months in the dark without any hope of seeing my relatives again. And this individual, I won't say this person's name until that person's ready, was rescued by a truck driver. And she took a gamble. I don't want to get into the details, but let's just say it was in the worst position possible. And that person needed to get out, and it was either live or die at that moment. Get in that truck, and that truck driver could have just been another person who worked for the captors, but luckily that person was at the right place at the right time. But these survivors of human trafficking have been through so much. And I'm saying that because I don't want to give away too much and get too graphic for your show, but let's just say it involves a few. I don't want to say it here, but I'll just say that it involves using a Ziploc bag, a camera, and sometimes a shovel when they have to. And it's depressing to know what the media likes to cover just because it's not good for business and the higher ups. And I said it, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but if you want to censor it, but if there's one thing that most if there's any holiday decorations or Epstein have in common, is that they didn't hang themselves. We all know what happened. They're hiding something that's up there. But there's nothing to hide when it comes to your willingness to help out others who deserve a better life, especially our veterans. And I'm sorry if it sounds too political, but I do want to
Oh,
say
no,
that
no, no, that's
there's
fine
something.
because look, human trafficking is something we need to do a lot more. This is something that you can see it happening, and people who don't care don't pay attention. But you can notice that there are people who sit there and are hunting, human hunting
Yep.
at Walmart, at these stores. You can tell because there's something about them that's just not right. And if somebody look, if there's a student that seems scared, there's probably a good reason for that. They they prey on loneliness. They prey on new, a newness of a situation.
Mm.
And we have to, as stewards of our communities, as people in our communities, we have it within ourselves to stop such horrible, horrible things. We just have to kind of put a little bit of effort into it. And one is, if you see a group of people hanging around and starting to follow, single girls that are walking around, kids that are walking around, you know, maybe have that in your mind and do the whole 9-1 wait thing. Make sure that, there's not going to be anything there that could be detrimental. And one of the great places, and I'm just going to throw out their name, but go to the averycenter.org. Go to the averycenter.org. They've got wonderful, wonderful recorded speeches of lessons where they can tell you what's going on, what to look for. I would have never known some of the tricks that these monsters revert to without the lessons of Megan and her wonderful crew at the
Mm.
Avery Center, because they've been through it. And the levels that they go to are just, it's horrendous. It really is. And it's deplorable. And what they do once they have you there, the stuff that they have these individuals do is just, it's atrocious.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to put it. So, human trafficking is, and we live in an area where we've got three different, or actually we've got 5 different colleges in our area. We've got a high migrant population, um, and this is a very, very active place for trafficking, because you've got people, college students, who can't afford to go back home when everyone else is on vacation or something. They can't afford to go back home. So they're desperate for that attention, or they just moved here from another state or something. They're desperate for a kinship, for a friendship. My lesson to you guys has got to be very particular on what you do. Um, don't want to simplify this too much, but stranger danger.
Hmm.
Stranger danger. Just keep your radar up, and you got to be careful. And I appreciate you bringing out these lessons, because it's it's just one of those things. And as far as animals go, you know it's a sad fact that even a beaten dog will still love its owner, even though the owner
Yeah.
doesn't have any room for him. I joke often about needing to beat my dogs more, but I wouldn't beat my dogs if you paid me. I love my dogs, sometimes, but only when he's trying to eat the other ones. So, but Z, you offer people it's $149 every time they hire you, $149 that goes towards a nonprofit.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I completely forgot about mentioning that. And there's one of my favorite puppies right now. Speak of the angel, how
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
You heard me talking, I guess. So
but I don't think you oversimplified it enough with stranger danger, because there's a lot of preventatives out there. And if it's one thing that the captor did teach me, it's this. If you ever notice a child doing this and they can't speak up, it means help, or help me, or in that phrase. Correct me if I'm wrong, my apologies, but this is all I know. So if you notice that a grown man or woman is carrying a little kid around and they're doing this behind their back, it's a cry for help. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of people hanging around at Walmart, sorry, Walmart, Shaw Mart, uh, uh, shopping right in all those places, or especially airports that come across as, hey, I'm here to pick up this person. Oh, look at that, a free chauffeur. It must be great. And I'm sure you've known the movie Taken, where it's based on human trafficking, but no one talks about it like the Sounds of Freedoms. And but not to get harp on to the subject, but I just want to let everyone know. Great to know that you know the Avery Center. Great resource. Interesting name of origin. I won't give away too much, but let's just say it starts with A. And unfortunately, you're absolutely right about dogs. They're not just dogs, but they're your companions, person's best friend, man's best friend. They could be mistreated. They could be used as, as just a worker, but they suffer from PTSD too. And there are countries that I won't say names that mistreat them. They beat them because they don't see them as, you know, as cherishable as we do in the States, but I'm not going to pick those countries. Uh, so I do have a referral program, which was inspired by the community pay it forward. I'll say that first. And that referral program is if you know a nonprofit or an individual that's looking to maintain, support, develop, or redevelop a custom ADA compliant website that is specifically catered to their needs. And once they become a paying client, you are entitled to compensation of at least $150. But if for whatever reason you are not comfortable with the idea of accepting payment, I'll just donate it to a cause of your choice. With, of course, the exceptions being they cannot promote any forms of hate, prejudice, violence, or terrorism by any means. If it's a place that's giving, kind, and always about paying it forward. But personally, I recommend that you make the donations to Community Pay It Forward because without your contributions, we wouldn't be here today. And that's what I call the referral program, which was inspired by the Community Pay It Forward. Thank you for letting me share that.
I greatly appreciate it. And as the founder of Community Pay It Forward, it is not I have no qualms about sharing your program. and
Thank you.
and if the program that you support is not in our program, introduce them to our program. But until then, use this wonderful program that Zia is offering you, turn that into a wonderful, get yourself a wonderful a website built and support a cause that you love, whether it's in our system or not. Your program means something to you, and your support means everything to them.
Thank you.
Just remember that. Having that $150, that's like us finding a $20 bill in our coat. And I tell people this all the time. I'm going to turn that $20 bill into a soda. Unless we take and we give that $20 bill to a single mom who's out there struggling to put milk, cereal, gas in their vehicle, to get their kids to school, doctor's appointments, such things, get themselves to work. That money can be put to use, put to great use, and help a lot of people. And it's a simple process. And I love the fact that you've taken what we're doing and you've worked with it, and you've made it so important. So, and with the animals, you also forgot interview co-host, because that's what my dogs tend to think they are. So but I got both of them hovering around right now, so you'll see me trying to press things down. But Z, tell us about um uh and yes, this is a thing, ADA compliance.
Oh, ADA compliance. What a concept. Besides it, and thank you for bringing that up. Besides it being the American Dental Association, it's also involving the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was passed by George H.W. Bush of July of 1990 to avoid any discrimination of those who are disabled, handicapped, or differently abled, as I like to call them, whether they're visually impaired, hearing impaired, motor impaired skills, or intellectually challenged. And of course, this was formed by the Department of Justice to avoid any discrimination. Uh, People often think, well, ADA compliance, is that only apply to websites? No, it's applied to building codes, apps, and just overall living, including stadiums and museums. And I actually know a nonprofit, I'll give them a shout out, called Destination Accessible, where it's all about they go before you know if the places that you go to are accessible or not. And given the pandemic, not to gripe here, people have been using ADA compliance as a scare tactic to say, hey, if you don't have a website that's not ADA accessible, you're going to get sued. Well, you can get sued for anything. You can get sued for saying the wrong things, or you can get sued for saying or tripping and falling. The significance of having an ADA compliant building, website, or anything that's accessible for those who are differently abled is to provide equal access to those who want to receive that information. And I've seen it firsthand where a lot of government websites or certain websites are too focused on making their websites or apps or buildings too flashy, but they don't think about those who are sitting in wheelchairs, those who cannot see. Some examples, when you go to the New York City subway, there are announcements, but what about those who are deaf? What are the announcements? So it'd be nice to have closed captioning in areas where they fill in advertisements. Nope. They want to attract more tourists. They want to attract more people who have never been to the city. But there are some trends that are working on it, but I don't want to get off topic here. But ADA compliance is for all for equal access. And if anyone wants to learn more about the Americans with Disabilities Act, please visit www.ada.gov. And again, that's if you're modern, like most people, I'm not, you could just go to ada.gov. You know it's legitimate because it ends with GOV for
Yeah.
gov.
And one of the things that you did immediately was you helped me out because I had a bad habit of when I first built my own website, I had a bad habit of having too many motion things and things that were moving around, and you explained to me how this is difficult for certain people to look at, or because of color mixtures or whatever it was, people couldn't read it, people who were colorblind or something like that. And if you go and you look on my website that you so artfully built, there's a little wheelchair icon on the bottom, which is the ADA button. And you take and you press on that button, and you can change the size of the font size. You can change the distortion of the screen, the coloring. You can take out coloring. You can there's so much you can do. And you can even make it to where, if you have trouble, it takes and highlights portion of the reading, and it'll read it for you. And there's so many things on there that are so uh eye-opening, because if you don't have that, you're losing customers. People with disabilities, folks, they shop too. Just remember that. They shop too. They like having a say. And if they can't read your website, they're not going to sit there and complain about it. They're going to move on. They're going to go to somewhere where they can read it. So you definitely wanted to make sure that you're ADA compliant. And Mr. Z, I know that you work very hard on making sure every website that you put together is ADA compliant. That's one of the things that you pretty much insist on.
I
So,
could be, I'm sorry to
no, go on
Tim, but
ahead. Go on ahead.
uh, I appreciate the kind words. I really do. And just for the record, everyone, kudos to Zach for building his own website from scratch at the moment. If I I don't think there was a lot of anything wrong with the website. And given someone like yourself that is an advocate of providing equality to all, and I think you know, there were a few changes that we could have changed, but the fact that you figured it out on your own, you made the changes, and I know I could be very pushy when it comes to ADA compliance, but hey, you were ready to take on it like it was a first priority. Some people might think ADA compliance is just, I'll get around to it or when I get a chance, or some people who want to be like T-Rexes and think, oh, this is never going to be a thing. It never happens. I've been in the industry for 3 years. Well, there are people who know that's been around since July of 1990, like yourself, probably before your time, and being able to help out those who deserve equal access, like yourself. And I appreciate you going over the widgets, what it offers, but there's just so much more that we can do to make
Yeah.
not just websites accessible, but buildings more accessible. And some wheelchair. I've talked to a few architects. I've talked to a few people that are in wheelchairs. Some ramps are too steep to climb up, even if you're having a motorized wheelchair, because if it's hard enough to go up, but also going down because you can't just, you know, hold on to your wheels without causing friction in your hands.
It's damn
And
dangerous.
it is so true. And some subway lines, I keep going back to the subway lines. They're trying their best to add more ramps, but it's just not stable, I think. The other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of ADA compliance, forgot what it was. It was something to do with elevators and access and, you know, subway lines. There has been an estimated report that less than 25% of all elevators right now in New York City are out of service or just doesn't work. And the one that you may find that works won't work consistently. So I'm not saying anything bad about New York City. I love my city. It's a wonderful city to be in if you're a tourist, but if you're in need of some accessibility assistance, then you're gonna have to spend a little bit more. Just get a taxi if it's accessible, and don't get me started on their buses. That's a whole different topic for another time because I've been in the bus or two, and you'd be surprised that there aren't enough handicap seats, and some people like to use that area just to put their shopping bags there and not give any consideration for those who really need it. And it's sad to see them in the bus stop, only to find out that some buses don't have those elevator ramps. But I could go on a rant, but that's another talk for another time. But yeah, so thank you
Consideration
for
is
bringing it
just,
up.
yeah, consideration is just something we all need to do a little bit more of. But Mr. Z, how do people
Thank you.
get a hold of you?
Thank you. I appreciate asking that. First place you definitely want to go to is the Community Pay It Forward website, which is www.communitypayitforward.us, because it's about us, not about me. You'll find me there. Or if you'd like to scan my QR code, created by Web Detective Trevor of Select Services, LLC, who is also an expert in ADA compliance, WCAG compliance, GDPR compliance, and more. Or you can just visit my website directly by going to www.zwworldwebs.com or zwwebs for short.com.
And I'm glad that you brought up Trevor. There is no personal animosity between you two. You
No,
two, all three of us, we work together in a very, very uh close relationship. And you know, it's those kind of relationships to me that mean the most, because you've got people who are working towards the same goal, and that one goal is helping others. Brother, thank you so very
appreciate it.
much
Thank
for
you.
your time. I appreciate it. Hey,
Thank you for
everybody,
having me here.
please make sure that you check out Z World Webs. They built our website. They can definitely build yours and do a lot of good while you're doing it. So thank you very much, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.